John stepped off the elevator on the Starship Endurance, his mind still buzzing with thoughts of the upcoming mission. It was a big one. A battle against the Krylon, a hostile alien species that had been terrorizing the outer colonies. His squad had been briefed earlier, and now all he could think about was making sure he was ready. Lost in his thoughts, he headed for the locker room, where he planned to change into his gear. He had done this 100 times before, so he wasn't paying much attention. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and John walked right in. He didn't even glance at the sign above the door, which clearly read Women's Locker Room. He was too busy thinking about the mission. But as soon as he stepped inside, something felt off. The room was quieter than usual. There were no loud conversations or jokes like there normally were in the men's locker room. John noticed a few people in the corner, but instead of the familiar faces of his male squadmates, he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. Women. John's heart skipped a beat as he realized he had walked straight into the women's locker room by mistake. The female soldiers were busy getting ready for the mission. Some were pulling on armored boots, while others were adjusting their tactical vests. Their movements were quick and efficient, showing how well-trained they were. And they all wore the same badge, the Valkyrie unit, an elite group known for their deadly skills in battle. John stood there, frozen, his mind racing. How could he have made such a stupid mistake? His face turned red as he looked around, hoping no one had noticed him. But it was too late. One of the women, a tall soldier with short, dark hair, glanced over at him. She raised an eyebrow, but didn't say anything. For a second, John thought she might yell at him or tell him to get out. Instead, she just smiled, like she found the whole situation amusing. John's heart pounded in his chest. He opened his mouth to apologize, but before he could say anything, the rest of the Valkyrie unit noticed him too. Their reactions weren't what he expected. Instead of being angry or shouting at him to leave, they started laughing. "Hey, looks like we got a visitor," one of them joked, nudging her friend. John didn't know what to say. He had expected them to be mad, maybe even report him for walking into their locker room, but they didn't seem bothered at all. In fact, they were acting like it was the funniest thing they had seen all day. "Don't worry, we don't bite," said the tall soldier who had spotted him first. She crossed her arms and leaned against a locker, still smiling. "Unless you give us a reason to." John finally managed to speak. "Oh, sorry," he stammered. "I didn't mean to. I thought this was the men's locker room." Another soldier interrupted, still chuckling. "Yeah, we figured. Happens more often than you'd think." John blinked, surprised. More often than you'd think. This was a military starship, and the Valkyrie unit was one of the most feared and respected teams in the fleet. Yet here they were, joking around with him like it was no big deal. "I'll just go now," John said, taking a step back toward the door. His face was still burning with embarrassment. But before he could leave, the door slid open again, and a woman with a sharp, commanding presence entered the room. Her short blonde hair was slicked back, and her uniform was spotless. John recognized her immediately. Captain Elise, the leader of the Valkyrie unit. She was known for being tough, smart, and fearless in battle. If anyone was going to be mad about this, it would be her. John braced himself for the worst, but Captain Elise simply looked at him and raised an eyebrow. "Lost, soldier." Yeah," John mumbled, feeling smaller by the second. "Sorry, Captain, I'll leave." To his surprise, she didn't look angry. Instead, she gave him a small smile, the kind that told him she wasn't upset at all. "Relax," she said. "It happens. Just be careful next time." The rest of the women started laughing again, and John couldn't help but smile, though he was still embarrassed. He had expected to be in serious trouble, but instead, the Valkyrie unit seemed to be treating him like a friend. As the laughter died down, Captain Elise gave him a nod. "You're with the squad heading out with us tomorrow, right?" she asked. John nodded quickly. "Yes, Mom." "Good," she said, turning to her team. "We'll see you out there. And next time, make sure you read the sign on the door." With that, the women went back to preparing for the mission, leaving John standing by the door, still in shock. He had walked into the wrong locker room and somehow ended up making a good impression. This should capture John's awkward mistake and the unexpected reaction from the Valkyrie unit while keeping it light, interesting, and in basic English. "Let me know what you think." John nodded. "Thanks." With that, he turned and finally left the locker room. As the door slid shut behind him, he couldn't help but laugh to himself. What had just happened? He had walked into the wrong room, met the Valkyrie unit, and instead of being thrown out, he had ended up having a normal conversation with them. Their reaction had been nothing like he expected. As he walked down the hall, John realized something else. He wasn't just impressed by their skills as soldiers. He respected them as people. They had treated him with kindness and humor despite his mistake, and that was something he wouldn't forget anytime soon. This keeps the reaction light and surprising while maintaining a sense of connection between John and the Valkyrie unit, using simple language to keep things engaging. Let me know how it works for you. Making new friends. John couldn't stop thinking about what had happened in the women's locker room. The Valkyrie unit had treated him like one of their own, even though he had walked in by mistake. He still couldn't believe how laid back they were about it. As he got ready for the upcoming mission, their laughter and easygoing nature kept replaying in his head. He had always heard the Valkyrie unit was strict, deadly, and serious, but now he saw another side of them, one that made him feel like maybe they weren't so different after all. The next day, John found himself in the training room aboard the Endurance. His squad, Bravo Squad, had been paired with the Valkyrie unit to train together before the big mission. He was still a little nervous. He had never worked with an all-female unit before, especially not one as famous as the Valkyrie unit. What if they were still laughing about yesterday? What if they didn't take him seriously? As soon as he walked in, though, his worries faded. Captain Elis was already there with her team, going over plans for the joint training exercise. She looked up when she saw John and gave him a nod. "Glad you made it, John," she said with a small smile. "You ready to get started?" John nodded, trying to hide his nerves. "Yeah, I'm ready." The rest of the Valkyrie unit glanced over at him, some smiling, others just giving him a friendly nod. It was clear they hadn't forgotten about yesterday, but it didn't seem to bother them. In fact, John could tell they were treating him like one of the team. Captain Elise started explaining the exercise. "We're going to simulate a battle scenario against the Krylon. We'll split into two teams, Bravo Squad on one side, Valkyrie unit on the other. The goal is to secure the objective and work together to take down the enemy." John listened closely, but inside, he was wondering how well he would do. The Valkyrie unit was known for being tough and incredibly skilled. What if he couldn't keep up? What if he made a fool of himself again? When the training started, though, all his doubts melted away. As soon as the exercise kicked off, John was fully focused. He moved quickly, using cover and firing at simulated targets with precision. The Valkyrie unit was just as impressive as he expected. They moved like a well-oiled machine, communicating smoothly and taking down targets with ease. John found himself teaming up with a few of them, covering each other's backs and sharing tactics without even having to say much. It was like they already knew how to work together. One of the soldiers, the tall one from yesterday, ended up right next to John during the fight. She gave him a quick smile. "Not bad, John. You're holding your own." "Thanks," John replied, a bit surprised by the compliment. "You too. You guys are incredible." She chuckled. "We try. Stick with us, and you might learn a thing or two." John grinned, feeling more at ease. The Valkyrie unit wasn't just good. They were the best. But instead of looking down on him or treating him like an outsider, they were making him feel like part of the team. The exercise continued, and by the end, both teams had secured the objective and worked together to wipe out the simulated enemy. It wasn't just a win. It was a victory that felt earned through real teamwork. As they wrapped up, John couldn't help but feel proud. He had held his own, and more importantly, he had earned the respect of the Valkyrie unit. After the training, the group gathered around for a quick debrief. Captain Elis praised both teams for their coordination. "Bravo Squad and the Valkyrie unit make a strong team," she said, her voice calm but confident. "If we keep this up, we'll be more than ready for the Krylon." John could see the truth in her words. The training had shown him just how skilled these women were, but it had also shown him something else. They were more than just elite soldiers. They were a team that trusted each other, looked out for one another, and welcomed him in without hesitation. As they packed up, the tall soldier from earlier gave John a light punch on the shoulder. "You did good out there today, John," she said. "Not bad for a guy who walked into the wrong locker room yesterday." John laughed, the tension finally leaving him. "Yeah, thanks for not throwing me out." She grinned. "Hey, it happens, but you've earned your place today." John felt a surge of pride. He had started the day nervous about working with the Valkyrie unit, but now he felt like he had gained something far more valuable than just training experience. He had made new friends who treated him like one of their own. As he walked out of the training room, John knew that tomorrow's mission would be tough, but he wasn't worried anymore. With the Valkyrie unit by his side, he felt ready for whatever came next. This version should keep things engaging, showing John's growing friendship with the Valkyrie unit while keeping the language simple and easy to follow. Let me know how it works for you. The shared mission. The day of the mission had finally arrived. John stood in the briefing room, his heart racing as the details of their mission against the Krylon were laid out on the large screen in front of them. The Valkyrie unit and Bravo Squad were gathered together, listening intently as Captain Elise explained the plan. "The Krylon have been spotted near the colony on Terra 9, Captain Elise said, her voice steady and strong. "They're attacking the outer defenses and pushing to reach the civilian areas. Our job is simple: stop them before they break through. If they reach the colony, thousands of lives will be at risk." John felt a chill run down his spine. He knew how dangerous the Krylon were. They were ruthless, with advanced technology and deadly weapons that had destroyed many colonies before. This mission wasn't just about fighting another enemy. It was about saving lives. He glanced around the room, seeing the determined faces of his squad and the Valkyrie unit. There was no fear, only focus. Captain Elise continued to speak, outlining the plan in detail. "Bravo Squad will cover the eastern flank, while the Valkyrie unit takes the west. We'll meet in the middle to secure the main defense point. We'll need to move fast and hit them hard. If we hesitate, the Krylon will overwhelm us." John nodded along with the others, feeling the weight of the mission settle in. This wasn't just a simulation or training. This was the real deal. But there was something comforting about knowing they were in this together. The Valkyrie unit had proven themselves in training, and now it was time to see that in action. Once the briefing ended, everyone moved quickly to get ready. John suited up in his combat armor, checking his weapons and gear. He could hear the hum of the ship's engines as it approached the battlefield. His hands were steady, but inside, his nerves were on edge. This was the moment they had all been preparing for. Just before they were about to head out, Captain Elise walked up to him. "You ready for this, John?" John looked up, meeting her calm gaze. "Yeah," he said, hoping he sounded more confident than he felt. "I'm ready." Elise nodded. "Good. Stick with your squad and watch each other's backs. We've got this." As the dropship doors opened, John felt the rush of cool air hit his face. The planet below was dark, with flashes of gunfire and explosions lighting up the surface. The Krylon were already attacking, and it was up to them to stop the invasion. John's squad and the Valkyrie unit moved out quickly, landing on the surface and splitting off toward their assigned positions. The ground rumbled beneath John's feet as the sound of distant explosions echoed across the battlefield. His helmet visor displayed tactical data, showing the position of his team and the advancing Krylon forces. "Bravo squad, move up," their leader called out over the comms. John and his squad pushed forward, using the rocky terrain as cover. The Krylon forces were fast, their ships dropping them in waves. As soon as they reached the eastern flank, John saw them. Tall, insect-like creatures with sharp claws and glowing blue eyes. The Krylon moved with terrifying speed, their weapons firing beams of energy that tore through the ground. "Engage," their squad leader shouted. The unexpected reaction expanded. John stood near the door, his heart still pounding after walking into the women's locker room by mistake. He could feel the heat on his face as the Valkyrie unit continued to laugh. He had been so sure he was in trouble, but now he wasn't sure what to think. He expected yelling or someone throwing him out, but instead they were acting like it was no big deal. Captain Elise, the leader of the Valkyrie unit, had just smiled and told him to relax. "It happens," she'd said. John couldn't believe how calm she was about the whole thing. These women weren't like the other soldiers he knew. They were different, more confident, more relaxed. It was like nothing rattled them, not even a guy walking into their locker room. The tall soldier who had first noticed him stepped closer. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she teased, her smile wide. "Didn't expect a bunch of girls to be this chill, huh?" John scratched the back of his neck, unsure of what to say. I thought you'd be mad," he admitted. "Mad?" The soldier laughed. "For what? You didn't mean to walk in here, right?" "Of course not," John said quickly. "I didn't even notice the sign." "Then it's no big deal," she said with a shrug. "We're not that easily offended, you know." John blinked. He wasn't used to this kind of attitude. In his experience, people took stuff like this seriously, but the Valkyrie unit, they acted like it was just another day. They didn't care that he had accidentally walked in on them. It was almost like they were used to it. Captain Elise, who had been watching the whole time, stepped forward again. She was a few inches shorter than John, but her presence made her feel 10 feet tall. "You thought we'd throw you out, huh?" she said, folding her arms. "Maybe yell at you a bit." "Something like that," John admitted, feeling sheepish. Elise chuckled softly. "You're not the first guy to make that mistake. Probably won't be the last either." John's eyes widened. "Wait, other guys have done this before." "Oh yeah," one of the other women chimed in from across the room. She was tightening her boots, not even looking up as she spoke. "Happens more than you think. You'd be surprised how many people don't read signs around here." John shook his head, still trying to process everything. The idea that this happened often was mind-blowing. He'd always heard the Valkyrie unit was tough, fierce, and untouchable. But now, seeing them up close, they seemed normal. Not that they weren't still impressive. Their confidence, their strength, and the way they carried themselves. It was clear they were elite soldiers, but they were also human, and that surprised John. "I guess I was expecting." "I don't know, something different," John said, his voice trailing off. He wasn't sure how to explain it. "What, you thought we'd scream and kick you out like some girls in a high school drama?" the tall soldier said, giving him a playful shove on the shoulder. John chuckled nervously. "Maybe. I don't know." "Well, sorry to disappoint," she said with a wink. "We're soldiers, not actresses." Captain Elise stepped back and leaned against a locker, watching John closely. "You're with Bravo Squad, right?" she asked. John nodded. "Yeah, we're teamed up with you for the mission tomorrow." "Good," Elise said. "We could use the extra hands. The Krylon are no joke. It's going to be a tough fight." John shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Talking about the mission helped him calm down a bit, but he still felt awkward standing there. He couldn't believe they were being so casual about the whole thing. The rest of the Valkyrie unit seemed to go back to what they were doing, talking amongst themselves or adjusting their gear, as if John's mistake hadn't even happened. It was like they didn't care that a man had accidentally walked into their space. "Well," John said, feeling like he should leave before he overstayed his welcome. "I should probably go." Elise nodded. "Yeah, you should get ready for tomorrow." John took a step back toward the door, but the tall soldier stopped him with one last question. "Hey," she said, her tone light, but serious. "You nervous about the mission?" John paused. He didn't want to admit it, but he was. The Krylon were one of the deadliest enemies they'd faced, and the thought of going into battle against them was enough to make anyone nervous. "A little," he said, trying to sound calm. The soldier grinned. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just don't let it control you." John raised his rifle and opened fire, aiming for the Krylon soldiers that were closing in. His shots hit their armored bodies, but it took several rounds to bring one down. The Krylon were tough, but John and his team didn't let up. They held their ground, pushing back the enemy with precision and teamwork. On the other side of the battlefield, John could see flashes of gunfire where the Valkyrie unit was fighting. Even from a distance, he could tell they were handling the situation just as well as Bravo's squad. The women moved like lightning, taking down Krylon soldiers with quick, deadly accuracy. John felt a sense of pride knowing they were working together toward the same goal. The battle raged on for what felt like hours. The Krylon kept coming, but both teams held their lines. John's muscles burned from the constant movement, but he couldn't afford to slow down. Every time a Krylon soldier got too close, he fired another round, taking them down before they could strike. Suddenly, the call came through the comms. "Bravo squad, Valkyrie unit, converge on the defense point. The Krylon are making a final push." John's squad moved quickly toward the center, meeting up with the Valkyrie unit near the main defense point. The ground was littered with debris and fallen enemies, but the battle wasn't over yet. The Krylon were still pushing forward, their numbers overwhelming. Captain Elise took charge, her voice clear and commanding. "We hold this line. No one gets through." John and the others formed a tight defensive line, firing everything they had at the Krylon forces. The battle was intense, but together they fought back the enemy wave after wave. As the last Krylon soldier fell, silence settled over the battlefield. They had done it. The colony was safe. John lowered his rifle, breathing hard but feeling victorious. He looked over at the Valkyrie unit, who were catching their breath but still standing strong. They had fought side by side, and together they had won. Training together. After the success of the mission on Terra 9, the bond between Bravo squad and the Valkyrie unit grew stronger. John and his teammates had proven themselves in battle, and the respect between the two teams was clear. But now, the real challenge began, training together to prepare for even bigger threats in the future. The next few days were spent on the endurance, running drills, practicing tactics, and fine-tuning their teamwork. John wasn't sure what to expect from the joint training exercises, but he knew one thing: the Valkyrie unit didn't hold back. They were intense, focused, and always pushed themselves to be the best. And now, they were pushing Bravo squad to do the same. In the training arena, the teams lined up for a combat exercise. Captain Elise stood in front of both groups, her eyes sharp as she looked over the soldiers. "Today's training is all about coordination," she said. "Bravo squad and the Valkyrie unit will be working together in simulated combat. The goal is to take down the enemy without losing any teammates. You'll need to communicate, watch each other's backs, and move as one." John adjusted his helmet, feeling a mixture of excitement and nerves. The mission had gone well, but this was different. Training alongside the Valkyrie unit meant there was no room for mistakes. They were perfectionists, and John didn't want to be the one to mess up. The simulation started, and immediately, the battlefield lit up with holographic enemies. The Krylon soldiers weren't real this time, but they looked and moved just like they had on Terra 9. John could feel the adrenaline kick in as he moved forward with his squad, scanning the area for threats. "Bravo squad, take the left." Captain Elise's voice came through the comms. John and his team quickly moved to the left flank, firing at the simulated Krylon soldiers that appeared out of nowhere. The Valkyrie unit took the right, their movements swift and precise. John couldn't help but admire how quickly they reacted, taking down enemies with perfect aim. It was like watching a well-rehearsed dance. Every move they made was calculated and efficient. John fired at a Krylon soldier, hitting it square in the chest. The holographic enemy dissolved into thin air, but there were more coming. His squad worked together to cover each other, using the same tactics they had learned on Terra 9. But this time, they were faster, more coordinated. The days of training with the Valkyrie unit were paying off. As they pushed forward, John found himself next to the tall Valkyrie soldier he had spoken to before, the one who had joked about him walking into their locker room. She gave him a quick glance, a smile playing on her lips. "Not bad, John," she said, her voice full of energy. "You're getting faster." John grinned, feeling a boost of confidence. "Thanks. Trying to keep up with you guys." "You're doing more than keeping up," she said, firing at an enemy without even looking. "You're keeping us on our toes." The compliment made John feel proud. Training with the Valkyrie unit was tough, but it was also making him a better soldier. He could feel the improvement with each drill. His aim was sharper, his reflexes quicker, and his mind more focused. The simulation continued, with both teams working together flawlessly. Whenever Bravo Squad was pinned down, the Valkyrie unit was there to provide cover. And whenever the Valkyrie unit needed backup, Bravo Squad was right behind them, ready to jump in. It was like they had been fighting together for years, even though it had only been a few days. After what felt like hours, the simulation finally ended. The battlefield disappeared, replaced by the clean, empty training arena. John lowered his rifle, breathing hard but feeling satisfied. They had done it, completed the exercise without losing a single teammate. Captain Elise walked over, her expression unreadable as she looked at both teams. "Good work," she said, her voice steady. "You moved like a single unit out there. That's exactly what we need if we're going to survive out there." John could see the pride in her eyes, even if she didn't show it with a smile. The Valkyrie unit was known for being tough, but they respected skill and teamwork above all else. And today, Bravo Squad had earned that respect. As they gathered their gear and started to leave the arena, the tall Valkyrie soldier caught up with John. "You know," she said, her tone lighter now, "I think we make a pretty good team." John smiled, feeling the same way. "Yeah, we do. I never thought we'd be working this well together." She laughed. "Neither did I. But here we are, kicking Krylon butt like it's nothing." John nodded. The camaraderie between their teams was growing, and it felt good to be part of something bigger than just Bravo Squad. Training together had not only made them better soldiers, but it had also forged friendships that he knew would last long after this mission was over. As they walked back to the barracks, John couldn't help but feel like they were ready for whatever came next. The Krylon were a deadly enemy, but with the Valkyrie unit by their side, he knew they could face anything. This part focuses on the growing bond between Bravo Squad and the Valkyrie unit as they train together. The action and teamwork help keep things interesting, while the simple language maintains clarity and engagement. Let me know how this works for you. Growing closer. As the days passed, the bond between Bravo Squad and the Valkyrie unit grew stronger. They trained hard together, shared meals, and even swapped stories about their lives before the military. John found himself looking forward to each day, excited to see his new friends and learn more about them. One evening after a long day of training, the two squads gathered in the ship's common area. The atmosphere was relaxed, with everyone joking and laughing as they ate. John sat at a table with some of the Valkyrie soldiers, including the tall one he had gotten to know, named Zara. "So John," Zara said, taking a sip of her drink, "what did you do before you joined the military?" John paused, thinking back to his life on Earth. "Well, I was studying engineering. I loved building things, machines, robots, anything I could create. But then I realized I wanted to do something more with my life. So I joined the army. Zara nodded, interested. That's cool. I've always admired people who can build things. I can barely put together a piece of furniture without help. Everyone laughed, and John felt a sense of warmth spreading through him. What about you? He asked. What did you do before joining the Valkyrie unit? Zara smiled, her eyes sparkling with energy. I was a martial arts instructor. I loved teaching self-defense to women in my city. When the call came for the Valkyrie unit, I thought it was a chance to do more, to protect people on a bigger scale. John was impressed. That's amazing. You must be really skilled. Zara shrugged, a shy smile on her face. I try, but I still have a lot to learn. Every day it is a new challenge. As they continued talking, John noticed how easy it was to connect with Zara and the other Valkyrie soldiers. They shared stories, laughed about their training mishaps, and even teased each other playfully. It was a nice change from the usual military routine, and it felt good to be part of a team that supported one another. Later that night, as the laughter and chatter filled the room, John overheard some of the other soldiers talking about an upcoming competition. It was a friendly contest between Bravo Squad and the Valkyrie unit, featuring various challenges that would test their skills and teamwork. Whoever loses has to cook dinner for the other team. One of the Valkyries exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. John perked up at that. When is it? It's tomorrow night, Zora replied, grinning. You guys better bring your A-game, or you'll be stuck in the kitchen. John laughed, feeling a rush of competitive spirit. We won't lose. I promise. The next day, the competition began. Everyone was buzzing with energy, eager to prove themselves. The first challenge was an obstacle course that required speed and agility. Both teams lined up, ready to race through a series of obstacles, including climbing walls, rope swings, and even laser mazes. Captain Elise and the Valkyrie unit leader took turns cheering for their teams. As the starting signal rang out, John sprinted forward, determined to do his best. The obstacles were tough, but he pushed through, remembering the training he had done with the Valkyrie unit. Every jump and climb felt like a chance to show how far they had all come together. Zura was right beside him, her movements smooth and confident. Keep going, John. We got this, she shouted, encouraging him to push harder. Zura was right beside him, her movements smooth and confident. Keep going, John. We've got this, she shouted, encouraging him to push harder. With Zora's support, John found his second wind. They crossed the finish line together, panting and laughing, but exhilarated. Bravo Squad and the Valkyrie unit cheered for each other, proud of the teamwork they had shown. The next challenge was a marksmanship test. Both teams gathered at the firing range, where they would shoot at targets from various distances. John felt a bit anxious but remembered all the practice he had done with the Valkyrie unit. He was ready to show what he could do. As they took turns shooting, Zara stood nearby, giving tips and cheering him on. Focus on your breath, John. You've got this, she called, her voice filled with confidence. With her encouragement, John took a deep breath, steadied his aim, and fired. The shot rang out, hitting the target square in the center. He smiled, feeling proud. The friendly competition pushed everyone to perform better, and soon it was clear that both teams were giving it their all. As the sun began to set, the last challenge was a team strategy game. Both squads had to work together to outsmart the other, using their training and teamwork to complete the objectives. John felt the excitement building as they strategized and moved together on the board, each member contributing ideas and solutions. The atmosphere was electric, filled with laughter, cheers, and friendly banter. John realized that these moments were building something special, friendships that went beyond the battlefield. They were no longer just fellow soldiers. They were a family, united by their experiences and their desire to protect one another. As the day came to an end, they gathered to celebrate their achievements. Regardless of who had won, it felt like everyone had come out on top. They had grown closer, and their bond was stronger than ever. "Next time, we'll have to do this again," Zora said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Maybe a rematch." John laughed, feeling grateful for the connections he had made. "Absolutely. I wouldn't miss it for the world." As the night wore on, John felt a sense of belonging he hadn't experienced before. With the Valkyrie unit by their side, he knew they could face any challenge together. The battle and respect. The time had come for the biggest battle yet. Intelligence reports had confirmed that the Krylon were planning a major attack on the nearby colony of Nova 5. Both Bravo Squad and the Valkyrie unit were called into action. The tension was palpable as everyone prepared for what lay ahead. John stood in the armory, checking his gear for the last time. His heart raced with a mix of excitement and fear. This was it. They had trained hard together, and now they would face the Krylon side by side. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of all the moments that had brought them to this point. The training, the competitions, and the friendships they had forged. Zora walked in, her expression serious but focused. "You ready for this, John?" she asked, adjusting her combat vest. John nodded, feeling a rush of determination. "Yeah, I'm ready. Let's show them what we've got." As they boarded the dropship, the mood shifted. The reality of the situation sunk in. This wasn't just another training exercise. Lives were at stake. John glanced at his teammates and the Valkyrie unit members around him. They shared determined looks, each silently promising to watch out for one another. The dropship shook as it flew toward the battlefield. The air was filled with the sounds of engines and chatter over the comms. Captain Elise briefed everyone one last time. "We'll land at the eastern perimeter and push forward. Bravo Squad will take the lead, and the Valkyrie unit will follow closely. Stick together, communicate, and don't hesitate to adapt. We've got this." John felt a surge of confidence as the dropship landed with a heavy thud. The doors flew open, and chaos greeted them. The sounds of gunfire and explosions echoed through the air. Without hesitation, John sprinted out with Bravo Squad, Zora, and the Valkyrie soldiers right behind him. "Let's move," John shouted, leading the way as they advanced toward the enemy. The battlefield was intense. The Krylon were everywhere, their insect-like forms moving rapidly as they unleashed energy blasts. John quickly took cover behind a large rock, firing back at the approaching enemies. The sound of gunfire and the crackle of energy beams filled the air. "John, to your left," Zora shouted, pointing at a Krylon soldier flanking him. John spun around just in time, firing and taking the enemy down. The rush of adrenaline surged through him as he realized how well they were working together. Communication and teamwork had become second nature to him and the Valkyrie unit. They moved like a well-oiled machine, covering each other and pushing forward. As they advanced deeper into the enemy territory, they encountered a group of Krylon soldiers blocking their path. "We need to push through," John yelled. "We can't let them hold us back." "On my mark," Captain Elise ordered, raising her weapon. 3, 2, 1, go. With that, Bravo Squad charged forward, firing at the Krylon while the Valkyrie unit flanked them. John felt his heart pounding as they closed in on the enemy. Together, they took down the Krylon, pushing through the line and moving closer to their objective. Suddenly, a large Krylon commander appeared, towering over the others. It was different, more powerful and armored than the regular soldiers. John's eyes widened, realizing that this was the leader of the Krylon forces. "We have to take it down," he yelled. "If we don't, it'll rally the others." Zora nodded, determination in her eyes. "We can't let that happen. Let's go." With a fierce battle cry, John and Zara led the charge against the commander. The fight was brutal. The commander fought back fiercely, swinging its weapon and firing blasts of energy. John narrowly dodged an attack, feeling the heat of the energy blast pass by him. "Keep firing. Aim for its weak spots," Zara shouted, shooting at the commander's exposed joints. The rest of the team joined in, unleashing a barrage of firepower at the giant enemy. With teamwork and determination, they began to wear down the commander. John felt a surge of hope as he saw the creature stumble. "Now, push forward," he yelled. The Valkyrie unit and Bravo squad pressed in, combining their firepower. With one final shot, the Krylon commander fell, crashing to the ground. Cheers erupted from both teams as they regrouped, breathless but victorious. "Great job, everyone," Captain Elis praised, her voice ringing through the comms. "We did it together." As the remaining Krylon soldiers retreated, John felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had not only won the battle but had also proven how strong their bond had become. The respect between Bravo squad and the Valkyrie unit was evident in every look and cheer shared among them. Zara turned to John, a smile brightening her face. "We did it. I knew we could." John returned her smile, feeling a mix of pride and gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you all. We really are a team." As they began to assess the battlefield and check for any remaining threats, John couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. From the awkward first meeting to standing shoulder to shoulder in battle, they had built something strong and lasting. In that moment, John realized that it wasn't just about the fight. It was about the friendships formed, the trust built, and the respect earned. They had faced danger together, and that would bind them for life. The battle might have been won, but John knew their journey was just beginning. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united as one unstoppable force.